Probably one of our most common topic requests, how to handle tantrums. I've got 4 things to do when my child throws a tantrum. Listen in. I promised you 4 things. Really, the first thing is the most important thing. So we're going to jump right in. Stay calm. You stay calm. You want to calm down your child. It's important to start right here at home. I guess there's a lot of obvious reasons why this is the case. Understanding child psychology. Remember that children become little emotional mirrors. It's like they want to reflect everything that's going on with mom or dad. And so they're going to pick up on your emotional state. And if you're all tied up in knots, it's going to impact their ability to regulate their own emotions and behaviors. And kids already have a challenge with that, especially young kids like toddlers. But even teenagers sometimes will be overwhelmed with their emotions or their affects. And as they launch into a tantrum, the most important thing you can do is to keep control of you. I know that's easier said than done. So a quick brain hack for you. Do some breathing. And I mean prior to having to deal with the fight or flight response of your child, learn to regulate your own. So practice this just maybe 3 times a day for a couple of days. Take slow, deep breaths. And I'm not talking about when you're interacting with your child. I'm talking about just find a time to practice this because you need to get in control of your own emotional world. So the breath can go something like this. In through the nose and stretch those lungs and hold. For maybe 10 seconds. You don't have to hold a long time, but just feel the stretch. And then slowly out through the mouth. Purse your lips like you're blowing out birthday candles to restrict the flow a little here. You want to take about twice as long to exhale as you did to inhale. And then push it out a little. And then in through the nose again. Hold for maybe 5-10 seconds. Out through the mouth. Nice and slow. Okay, now if you're doing that with me, you're going to feel something happening. What we're doing here is reversing the fight or flight response that's such a natural reaction of our brain, calming down the limbic system. We're getting the blood flow redirected up to the frontal cortex that we're going to need to do the other things that are necessary when our kids throw in a tantrum. We've got to get our own brain back. Reclaim the brain. Get that real estate back into your control. Okay? And you can do that through the breathing. Now, if you've practiced this, then when your kid's tipping over and you feel yourself getting triggered, you can take 1 breath. Do it the same way. In through the nose. Hold briefly. Out through the mouth. Nice and slow. And if you've practiced, just that action will be enough to help you to employ tip number 1. Stay calm. Now remember, some things you control and other things you don't. You don't get to control whether your child throws a tantrum or not. If you were in control of it, it wouldn't be happening. So let's connect to that and realize, okay, it's going to happen. I don't get to decide that, but I can contain it. Tip number 2 is to contain the tantrum. If it's going to happen and you can't stop it, at least move it into a place where it can be somewhat contained. So you might choose the child's room. You might have a timeout chair or an area of your house like the bottom 3 stairs, for example, or a hallway that's kind of shut off from the rest of the house. Someplace where you can contain it. And as you contain it, you use wording that sounds kind of like, I understand that you're upset. This is the place where you can have your tantrum. If you want to call it a tantrum, you could call it something else. This is the place where you can have your meltdown. This is the place where you get to be until you're done. And you're staying calm. Remember, that's tip number 1. Contain that tantrum. Usually, Kids are pitching this fit. They're throwing this tantrum for some reason. And you can usually figure out what it is because you're so brilliant. And it's not always that hard. Sometimes they throw a tantrum because they didn't get something that they wanted. This happens all the time in very inconvenient places, like at the grocery store, when the child wants that candy over there that's so alluring and so tempting, and mom says, no, honey, you can't have the candy, and then they throw a tantrum, right? So do the math. Why are they throwing the tantrum? Because they want the candy. We can easily make the mistake of reinforcing that tantrum by saying, oh, here, just be quiet, and giving them the candy. Tip number 4 for what to do when your child throws a tantrum is to refrain from paying them off for the tantrum. And to do that, you have to understand why they're doing it in the first place. Giving them what they're throwing the tantrum to get makes the problem worse. You probably already know this, but it's so easy to do it as a parent because you just want it to stop, right? Now, if you can contain it, like we talked about in tip number 2, that's going to help. We have to refrain from paying them off for what they're throwing tantrum for in the first place. The 4th tip that I have for you today has to do with your example and what you're modeling for your children. Model respect. Model appropriate communication. Sometimes you can do this right in the middle of the tantrum while they're pitching a fit, and you say in a calm way, sweetie, when you can talk to me the way I'm talking to you, we can resolve this. Now that assumes that you're modeling respect and communication and you're remaining calm, which was the first tip to start with. You'll also notice that this particular tip and strategy has nothing to do with the tantrum. It has to do with the culture that you're creating in your home, a culture of positive communications and interactions, a culture of positive parenting, because you are a benevolent, loving, generous parent. And this culture then starts to set a stage for the children where it's less comfortable for them to throw a tantrum in the first place. Thank you for being here as a positive, conscious parent. If you haven't yet subscribed, would you please take a moment to do that right now? Push the big button that says subscribe and join our positive parenting community. We also have some wonderful resources prepared for you. Vicki and I have teamed up to bring you the Parenting Power Up. You can find that at parentingpowerup.com or click on it right over there. We look forward to being part of your parenting team.